Hey, it's Kelly with your A1 Extra, brought to you by Westminster Canterbury. With Hurricane Fiona hitting Puerto Rico and more storms developing, it's time to get an update from my favorite meteorologist, Sean Sublette, on hurricane season. Here's Sean.
Meteorologist Sean Sublette from the Richmond Times-Dispatch. Tropics obviously active, and they're going to stay that way for some time to come. Of course, that's Hurricane Fiona. On Thursday morning, a Category 4 storm moving away from the Bahamas. It will kind of skirt by Bermuda, but we do see some much more serious problems for the Atlantic provinces of Canada, meaning Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, those locations. Although it will technically weaken a tiny bit in these next 2 or 3 days, it's only because it's going to transition into something we call an extratropical cyclone. Think about what happened to Sandy as it interacted with the New Jersey shore about 10 years ago. It's a similar situation, we're afraid, for those areas into eastern Canada. So they're going to have waves there that are pushing 15 to 25 feet, making landfall in those locations this weekend. So when we think about what we're going to have to deal with in the United States and Virginia specifically over these next 5 to 10 days or so, that tiny little cluster of clouds there in the Caribbean, north of Caracas, Venezuela, that's probably going to develop into a legit tropical system in these next 2 or 3 days. And there's a lot of concern that the environment close to the system is going to be very favorable for development of potentially a major hurricane. Not so much the next 2 or 3 days, but toward the end of next week. And a lot of the simulations bring it into the Gulf of Mexico by the end of next week. After that, it's still wide open as to where it will ultimately end up. But we do think this is the most legitimate threat to the continental United States so far this tropical season. So the big takeaway is, again, Fiona is not going to affect us, but there is going to be some serious flooding in the Atlantic provinces of Canada. Keep an eye on the Caribbean through this weekend and early next week, as we do expect what's probably going to be Hurricane Hermine to be the biggest threat to the continental United States so far this season.
All right, that's it. Make sure you log on to richmond.com for more reporting and stories of Richmond and Central Virginia. And remember to follow along on social at RTD News. We'll talk to you next week for another A1 Extra presented by Westminster Canterbury.